does it feel now compared to, say, 20 years ago, 30? The same? Or?
Well, it's similar, but it's getting more difficult.
What gets more difficult?
Producing and perceiving one's sound quality.
You were actually worried about the hall, weren't you?
Yes, I find it difficult in here.
Do you want some feedback from everyone? He was worried that you couldn't quite get through into this acoustic? Or
Yeah, something like that.
Well, I could hear just about every single note back there.
Well, good.
What is it about the hall that you think is difficult to gauge?
It's got a big echo, but you start your note and then the room takes over and you can't do any more with it.
Yeah. But it sounds great in here.
I haven't played in here many times.
I find that surprising. The influences that you've had since the beginning through, you always come back to Jeffrey Gilbert, Marcel Moïse, Jean-Pierre Rampal. To many of us, these are very well-known names, but we haven't actually had personal contact with these flute players. I just wonder if you can encapsulate briefly what each of these people, these personalities, represented to you in your flute playing.
My meeting with, first hearing of Marcel Moïse, first one of these people I heard, was that I started the flute. I bullied my mother into giving me a flute when I was 12, almost 12. Of course, it was a big wooden thing, and I believe it was quite good of its kind. And then my godfather, who was from Ceylon, he was the world's greatest liar. He inspired me no end. He gave me a whole lot of second-hand records he acquired, and I acquired a record of the second Brandenburg Concerto. So I had one with Stokowski conducting the Philadelphia Orchestra, and I thought, hey, this is a good piece. And it had a great big bite out of it, where like tends to happen with 78 records. So I went off to the shop when I was 12 and bought another record. And this was the Adolf Busch chamber player. Started hearing Marcel Moïse. My godfather then gave me a record of Marcel Moïse playing Mozart D major concerto. He said, that's the best flute player in the world. Of course, I didn't believe him because I never believed a word he said. Later, I found out it was true, which was mostly inconsistent.
I think you talked about the same recording that Richard Aidney talks about.
Yes, everybody's been knocked for six by that particular record, that the most wonderful sound anybody's heard of.
And they were playing on the flutes that were out of tune then? How did they manage to do that?
Well, flutes are always out of tune. Traditional. They still are.
What about Jeffrey?
Well, the point is that, I had something, I'd heard one or two French flute players, and then I heard the leading players on the radio, and then I found out that the man I got the flute from didn't make the right sound. And I said, I don't think I better learn with him. I didn't know what the right sound was, but I knew it wasn't that. And then we started finding out who makes it. And then Jeffrey Gilbert came out. He was the first man who had a platinum flute. Didn't make a tiny bit of difference. He put it in the safe after 6 months and didn't play it. He was the man who had this vital sound.
So you used to hear Jeffrey in orchestras and recitals? What was the context?
One would hear these people on the radio. I mean, it was the third program, our Radio 3, was very much a central part of our lives.
Okay. And what did Jean-Pierre Rampal fit in?
Well, later I went to study in Paris, and my godfather started, the Jean-Pierre Rampal, but I didn't take notice of him, because I never did.
Why?
Because he was the world's greatest liar.
But so was your granddad.
No, that was my godfather.
Oh, I see.
My big influence. And I finally went to Paris and was having lessons. Geoffrey Gilbert came and heard me having a lesson and said, you might learn a lot more with recital. So I had a contact, so I went and had some lessons. I had 4 or 5 lessons with him. And he was wonderful. He was concerned about going to the top of a phrase and coming down, which nobody I'd met had ever really talked simply about taking the music up and taking it down again.
So he lived to scales in a way that
He was special about scales, finding scales and everything.
Okay. Can I ask you maybe a little bit more of a personal question? Well, it's not very personal. We all love you and know you, and we all worry about our flute playing and are constantly dreaming about a better way to play. What I want to ask you, if you can cast your eye to 2 or 3 moments in your life. Your life is in your late teens, your life in your 30s, 40s, and now. Without the obvious kind of put-downs, can you tell me how you feel your flute playing has evolved as much as you can in 5 minutes?
Well, some of the time it's hanging on, trying to do what you could do before.
Which is not a nice place to be, I suppose.
Well, we're in it, most of us are in that every day. You pick up the flute and it sounds like something the cat bought.
Well, I felt like that 2 years after I left college. I felt the best years of me were behind me, and then I spent several years looking over my shoulder instead of pushing into the future. And then something else starts to be born once you stop looking over your shoulder.
Yes, but then at the same time, one's sort of got new ideas which one wants to get. I mean, I was terribly influenced by Julian Bream. Now, while I was still at school, made myself a guitar and got interested in the guitar, which is my interest in Villa Lobos. And I was fascinated with how Julian Bream played the guitar, with all those wonderful colours. You'd be plucking it near the bridge, and there, different wobbles. Nothing wicked with all that on the flute. So I've been trying to do those sort of things ever since, and I still want to play like that. And it's a question of finding new tricks for making the flute not an instrument which you always pluck the string in the same place.
Well, you certainly
We can
shown
try.
us how to do that
Yeah.
over many years.
And also,
You go on.
to make the flute do different things physically. I mean, kick the flute into shape, make it. We're playing with out-of-tune flutes, move the damn holes. And get it so that it will do easily what we have to struggle to do.
I can tell by moving my lips, but you actually...
No, I'm better, I'm too lazy.
Can we ask the audience if they have any questions at this point?
Like one of my favourite flute players is Fernand Dufresne. And I thought, this flute's got the Dufresne noise in it, and I'd be bullying it. Of course, it's got new keys, only 30 years old, made by Albert Cooper. And the other one is the Mel Bonis flute. I call it the Mel Bonis flute. I didn't play Mel Bonis on it today. I saved it for the Villa Lobos because it was born in 1858. It's Louis Lot number 315 and started life as a sharp pitch flute. You know, 100 years or so ago, we had English pitch was A452 or sharper, and continental pitch was 435. It was about a quarter of a tone's difference. So you had to have separate instruments to go to play in another country if you could cope at all. And England had a whole lot of these sharp pitch old flutes. And this was one of those that turned up. I bought it from Geoffrey Gilbert, and it was lying around for a while, and then finally I tuned it to some new scale, and then it was out of tune. I tuned it again and again, and I had new keys put on it somewhere, and then finally I got Altus keys on it, and it happens to go rather well. I find a good nickel head joint, which I like on it. So it's a real dog's breakfast.
Did you do anything with the head joint?
What?
Did you do anything with the head joint?
Yeah, I got new lip plates put on.
When a student comes to you in first year here at the academy, what's the first thing you set out? Do you have your plan of action? What kind of things do you work on first? Or is it
About the first thing is note bending. I say I don't want to do this all the time, but you've surely got to be able to do it to get a flexibility of moving the pitch of the note. And then getting the harmonics into you, if possible.
And how do you working with that?
Well, finding out how the hell you can move it, which is by covering and uncovering the mouth hole and changing the direction of the air.
For those who couldn't hear, he's asking about how styles of playing have evolved over the years and what Wim feels about the changes as time has gone on, and how your relationship with that, basically. Are we becoming misguided in any way, or are you happy with the way things are evolving?
Well, they're evolving, but you can't control how things evolve. All I try to do is to slightly improve the intonation of the flute, because I got bored of hearing it so out of tune. I don't know if I'm always successful, but I think things have got a lot better over the last 50, 60 years. There's still an awful lot of that train whistle style going on, which I abhor.
What do you mean by that?
Just, well, it's a bit of an expression. When I was a student, there were two distinct styles of playing. We called it English and French. There were the English who played on wooden flutes, like I started off, and there were the French who played on metal flutes, played with a lot of googe, and they played sharp. They both played sharp. The question of which was the lesser of two evils. And then one or two very distinguished players who didn't play out of tune. There was Oliver Bannister on the wooden flute front, absolutely marvellous. Fernand Dufresne and Geoffrey Gilbert playing metal flutes. They sounded fantastically good, different ways. Geoffrey Gilbert was playing in a very refined, delicate way. Dufresne played big and large and projected.
Which goes maybe contrary to the cliche English-French style. The British are supposed to play with a kind of wider, more open, bigger sound, no? And the French are more like, that's a stereotype.
Well, that's how it seemed, but Dufresne was one of those.
Okay.
Sarah's asking, when I start a new piece, do I have a way of going about it? Well, read through the music from the piano score, try and play some of it to get the idea on the piano first, and get some idea of how the phrases go, what the harmonies are, and the rhythms, and then have a bash. But certainly start off with the piano. And then change it if it's not good enough.
Can we all thank Wim for a most wonderful concert, and not just only for the concert, but for so many years of showing us what can be done